Hey, this is Warren Redlick. There was a little bit of a contrast between the Tesla Impact Report and Tesla Autonomy Day about how much a Tesla vehicle costs to operate on a per mile basis. And that matters because when you're thinking about a robotaxi future, how much does a vehicle cost to operate affects how much the price will be per mile and how much profit a Tesla robotaxi will make. So if you're planning on riding in robotaxis or if you're hoping to own a robotaxi, this is an important thing to understand. Are you ready? Let's go. This is from the Tesla Impact Report, and you can see that Tesla describing the total cost of ownership for Model 3 standard range, the least expensive Tesla in the United States, at 49 cents per mile. Contrasting that with a Toyota Corolla to show that a Tesla is, inexpensive relative to a Corolla. But this is not that what we were sold at Autonomy Day. At Autonomy Day, we were sold a different number. Let me show you that. At Autonomy Day, Elon talked about the cost per mile of operating the robotaxi be less than 18 cents a mile. That's a big difference from 49 cents to 18 cents. I'm going to break down for you what that means, why the numbers are different. It's not wrong, it's not really a conflict. It's just they're measuring something different. And you can see they're talking about 90,000 annual miles, and to the right of the screenshot here, it's 11 years. So this is like really doing 1 million miles on the vehicle.
The cost of ride sharing is, according to Uber and Lyft, is $2 to $3 a mile. The cost to run a robotaxi, we think, less than 18 cents a mile, and dropping. Like this would be current. This is current cost. Future costs will be lower.
Before I show you what I mean, let me show you why it matters. ARK Invest has been talking about a robotaxi future with price per mile of 25 cents per mile, 50 cents a mile, down to 25 cents a mile. If it costs 49 cents a mile to operate your vehicle, you can't sell rides at 25 cents or even 50 cents. You have to charge more than that. If you can drive the cost of a robotaxi ride down to 18 cents a mile, then you can offer rides at something more expensive like 50 cents a mile. I think you really need to get significantly below 18 cents to be able to offer that 25 cents a mile ride. And I'm going to show you next, over the course of a few minutes, how you can get to the price of a robotaxi ride, the cost of the owner of the robotaxi, driven down low enough that they can offer rides for as little as 25 cents a mile or maybe even less. So of course, I did a spreadsheet. So the left column here is total cost of ownership, 5 years, 12,000 miles. This is typically how you would think about a vehicle ownership over the course of 5 years and how you would compare total cost of ownership versus something like a Corolla, where the second column is total cost of ownership for 11 years at 90,000 miles a year, which is 990,000 miles or effectively 1 million miles. And this is where you see a significant difference. So you can see if both vehicles cost $40,000, if the selling price is $40,000, which is roughly the price of a standard range Model 3. And if after 5 years the Model 3 has a residual value of $20,000, but after 1 million miles the Model 3 has a residual value of 0, I'm hopeful it'll actually be worth more than 0, but let's say it's worth 0. Then what you end up with is you've used $20,000 worth of vehicle in your first 5 years at 12,000 miles versus here you've used $40,000 of vehicle over 1 million miles. You've driven 60,000 miles, 5 years times 12,000 miles versus 1 million miles. The amortization, you take the price of the vehicle, what you spent on the vehicle. You spent 40,000, you sold it for 20,000, you spent 40,000 and you have nothing left at the end. And you amortize that over the number of miles that it drove. So if you drive 60,000 miles and you've used $20,000, it works out to 33 cents a mile, the amortization of the vehicle. If you do 1 million miles at $40,000, the amortization is only 4 cents a mile. Now you can get into interest rates and say, well, actually you would amortize that a little higher than that, but these numbers are roughly accurate, within some, maybe it's 34 cents and 6 cents, but you get the idea. Now, you look at watt hours per mile. The idea here is how much are you spending on electricity? 0.25 watt hours per mile is 4 miles a kilowatt hour, which is roughly what you get in a standard range Model 3. I think technically you're getting 4.5 miles a kilowatt hour, but 0.25 is much easier to work with than whatever would come out with 4.5 miles a kilowatt hour. And maybe if you got 5 miles a kilowatt hour, this would be 0.20. And I'm just assuming here that the cost of electricity is 10 cents a kilowatt hour. I actually pay 15 cents a kilowatt hour where I am now. Some people are using solar and they're paying effectively nothing, so you can play games with that. But either way, you work out an electricity cost per mile of 3 cents a mile. It's the same for both cars. I think in the future, Tesla may find ways of generating electricity for less, and we're going to see that later in this video. But so you've got 3 cents a mile here on top of the 4 cents or 33 cents. Then you've got insurance cost. And I'm calling it $2,000 for the total cost of ownership for the 5-year 20,000 plan over 12,000 miles a year versus $4,000 for 90,000 miles a year. Now, this is a little bit optimistic on my part. But I think what we're going to see is if the cars are driving themselves, their crash rate's going to be a lot lower. This is when we get to a robotaxi world where the robotaxi software is significantly safer than human. Never going to drive drunk. It's never going to get distracted by the girl in the bikini. It's never going to get sick. So generally speaking, I think we're going to see fewer accidents. But even if you increase these numbers, you're going to get something different. But using these numbers, I calculate 17 cents per mile for the Toyota, for the 5-year 12,000 version versus 4 cents a mile here. Then I just figured, all right, what do tires cost? Let's say the tires cost $400 and they last 40,000 miles. You get a penny a mile for tires. There's some other cost, but what you see here is you get to 54 cents a mile on the 5-year 12,000 versus 12 cents a mile on my Robotaxi version. Now you're going to have to change some numbers around. You know, Tesla's numbers had 49 cents here versus 18 cents here. Now, the 18 cents was a previous generation of what was the early version of Model 3. Maybe something's got better. Maybe I'm leaving out some costs. Maybe I've exaggerated some costs here, but you can just sort of get the idea of what total. I'm guessing that when they did the total cost of ownership, they assumed a higher residual value, which right now used cars aren't selling that well. Tesla used cars aren't selling that well, so I think you're getting a different result. I'm not sure how they got the different numbers. Maybe they got their insurance costs different. Still in the ballpark. 54 cents is close to 49 cents, and 12 cents is close to 18 cents. So you can just see that's the contrast. Now, if on a current generation Model 3, you're getting total cost per mile down around 12 cents, then you can sell rides. Now, you're not going to get 25 cents a mile on this because roughly the car is going to do half the miles unpaid. So if half the miles are unpaid, it's really 24 cents per mile for paid miles. If you charge 25 cents, you would be making enough profit, gross profit, to justify the business model. So here you might be at 50 cents a mile. Will show you other versions of this where we can see the price being driven down more because this is the Model 3. We're heading towards a next generation vehicle platform, and I think that's going to drive prices down more. So let me show you that. This is my first cut at what the next generation Robotaxi vehicle might end up costing. Figure the vehicle is $20,000. It goes a million miles, and it's used up at the end. So you've burned $20,000 on a million miles. That's only 2 cents a mile. I'm predicting the next generation vehicle will get 6 miles a kilowatt hour, up from 4.5 miles a kilowatt hour on the Tesla Model 3 standard range. And that works out to about 0.17 watt hours per mile. At the same 10 cents a kilowatt hour, you end up with 2 cents per mile cost of electricity instead of 3 cents. Not a huge difference, but a difference. I got the same insurance cost. You got 4 cents a mile in insurance. I think Tesla on the Robotaxi vehicle will probably get the tire cost down and increase the life of the tires. Elon has talked about low rolling resistance tires, and that would drive the tire cost per mile down to less than half a penny. And following this path, we get the total cost per mile down to 8 cents. Now, 8 cents, you figure the vehicle drives, it drives as many unpaid miles as it drives paid miles. Now you have 16 cents cost per paid mile. Maybe you can do 25 cents a mile and still earn a significant profit by playing this game. You'd probably still be higher than 25 cents a mile, but wait, there's more. I've got more for you. So in my last version of the sheet, we got the same $20,000 cost. We got the same watt hours per mile, but I drove the electricity cost down to a penny a mile. I drove the dollars per kilowatt hour down to 4 cents from 10 cents, figuring that a big chunk of the energy would come from solar. That Tesla maybe has its own solar, or that the price of electricity is going to drop. There's people saying the price of electricity is going to drop. That drives the electricity cost per mile down to a penny. That saves you a little bit of money there. And I'm anticipating insurance will drop a lot further as the cars don't hit people. If we get to the point where Ashoka Ellaswamy talks about cars that don't crash, then your insurance cost goes to near zero. And now your insurance cost is a penny a mile instead of 4 cents a mile. Again, I've got the tire cost down there, and you end up with 4 cents a mile cost of operating the vehicle. I'm sure there's some other costs in there, but I think you get the idea that if you were able to do this and you were able to get, let's say, 5 cents a mile cost of operating the vehicle, and you doubled it because half the miles are unpaid, I still think they're going to optimize and really 60% of miles will be paid, and 40% will be unpaid. But even if 50% of miles were unpaid, at 5 cents a mile instead of the 4 cents a mile, you've got 10 cents cost per paid mile. You can probably sell rides at 25 cents a mile and still make a decent profit there. So I think that's how we can get to ARK Invest's vision of the future. Now, if you follow me and you know I'm into this pod car idea, I think we can drive this cost to $1,000, and we can drive the watt hours per mile much lower, and I think we can get to a penny a mile. I think the real future of Robotaxi is single passenger vehicles, but I'm not going to dive into that further in this video. But you can see where it goes. If it's 10, if we can make that work, then you can save more money and you can charge people less for rides, and it makes a Robotaxi future that much better for people who aren't wealthy, like those of us in the United States and Europe, to be able to say, hey, I can go for a ride and it's only going to cost me 5 cents a mile instead of 25 cents a mile. There's a lot of people in this world that 5 cents a mile is much more reasonable, and they can't really afford 25 cents a mile. We don't see that because we're so wealthy that 25 cents a mile is amazing compared to $2.50 a mile to ride in an Uber. So that's the short version of what we might see with robo-taxis in the future, how we're able to drive the price, how Tesla will be able to drive the cost per mile down. Now, keep in mind, if they're selling the car for $20,000, but they charge $100,000 for FSD, that changes the amortization, because the way Tesla's been running FSD, the FSD runs with the car. So when the car dies, you're out of FSD, so you lose that as well. So that can play with the numbers a little bit. Same issue with the pod car, by the way. If I'm going to license FSD from Tesla and they're going to charge me that much money for FSD, it kind of blows out the business model of the pod car. I can't say where it's going. I can't say how it's going to happen. But there's a lot of different ways you can tweak this. I'd love to hear. Please let me know in the comments below if you think I'm missing a cost, if you think I'm exaggerating a cost, if there's some other way we should account for this. Please let me know in the comments below. Please check out the t-shirts and the stainless steel water bottles at elonbits.com. Merch there is great. And please support me on the Locals platform, on Patreon, or as a YouTube channel member, or as a Twitter subscriber. Links to all that in the description below. Check out my other videos. Like this video, share, and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching.